Control of Infectious Disease Bill make provisions relating to quarantine and make regulations for preventing the introduction into and spread in Nigeria and for dangerous infectious disease and for related matters, standing on Honorable Femi Bajamila and two others. And now, honorable members will call the bill was the first time on Tuesday, 28th April 2020. I now invite Honorable Femi to move for the consideration of the bill the second time.
Honorable colleagues, I rise to move that a bill for an act to repeal the Quarantine Act, Cap Q2 laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004, and enact the Control of Infectious Disease Bill, make provisions relating to quarantine and make regulations for preventing the introduction into and spread in Nigeria of dangerous infectious diseases and for related matters, HB 836. Be ready second time.
Seconder, Honorable Imilulu.
Speaker, I remain Honorable Godwin Elubelu, and I represent the good people of Aniocha, Oshibili Federal Constituency. I'm from Delta State. I rise to second this motion, ably moved by Right Honorable Olufemi Hakim Wajabiamele. I so second.
Elumelu for seconding the motion. Honorable colleagues, we've already spent an hour and a half debating the last motion, so we're going to make this as brief as possible because it's also a very straightforward bill. Prior to now, we had a Quarantine Act. Unfortunately, it turns out that the Quarantine Act, which was passed several years ago, many years ago, turns out to be an archaic law.
Order, please. Order, please. Order, please.
Yes, the Quarantine Act turns out to be an archaic act. Weak and obsolete in many of its provisions. And it took a pandemic such as this for us to discover the weaknesses and the outdatedness of the act. So what does this do? This bill repeals an otherwise archaic act and in its place seeks to enact the Control of Infectious Diseases Bill. What this new bill does is to take most of the provisions of the Quarantine Act that subsist and are relevant to the present time and expunge the archaic provisions, many of which are present in the Quarantine Act. What I will do, Honorable Speaker, Honorable colleagues, is to try and apply 3-4 areas that this Infectious Diseases Control Act seeks to perfect or modernize the Quarantine Act. First, the Act has allowed the President to delegate to the Minister of Health the powers, in the first instance, exercised by the President to be exercised by or exercisable by the Minister of Health. Let us be clear that if in the first instance such exercise is exercised by such power is exercised by the Minister of Health, as it was by the President, within 10 days, I believe, they still need to seek approval of the National Assembly. The first instance exercise of power is just to deal with an emergency situation. Now this bill also seeks to do one thing. We have a very important body, extremely important, perhaps the most important body in dealing with infectious diseases, epidemics, and pandemics. But that body, which is called the NCDC, has very little power. Very little. It is a body of professionals, a body of experts, or at least meant to be, but they have very little discretion in doing their job. Now what this bill seeks to do is to empower the NCDC in several areas, in matters of quarantine and the administration of public health and infectious diseases. The NCDC now is allowed to even do health surveillance and power to be proactive as opposed to reactive. What the NCDC can do now is once there's an outbreak, then they run there after the horses bolted the stable. But now this bill allows the NCDC to be proactive, to investigate, e.g. epidemiological investigations and surveillance propaganda programs. So the NCDC can go somewhere if they hear that such and such a thing is happening without even any idea of an epidemic or a pandemic, and begin to take proactive steps. It also imposes a duty on all medical practitioners to provide information of a suspected case to the DG NCNC. So right now there's no duty. If you go to a medical doctor and he treats you, or he examines you, or he doesn't even examine you, but he is aware from his examination, or maybe even non-examination, that you are inflicted with an infectious disease. In spite of the client or patient-doctor relationship, this bill imposes an obligation on the medical doctor who attended to you to report that case to the DG NCNC. It also gives the DG NCNC the power to order for vaccination where there is a suspected outbreak. The trial, it gives the magistrate court in whatever jurisdiction the powers and the jurisdiction to try cases of anybody that offends or violates in any way this act or this bill as it is now. Honorable colleagues, you are aware that one of the almost embarrassing criticisms of the Quarantine Act was that the penalties for violating the Quarantine Act ranged from like 100 naira, 500 naira. That tells you how old or how archaic the Quarantine Act was. Even though 100 or 500 naira would have been relevant at that time, but in today's world, it goes to nothing. So the bill now raises penalties for violation from about 200,000 to up to 5 million naira, depending on the gravity of the violation. So, honorable colleagues, in a nutshell, and not to take too much of your time, this is merely an improvement on the Quarantine Act that seeks to empower the NCDC and allows it to do its job even in an unfettered way. So, honorable colleagues, Honorable Speaker, honorable colleagues, I thank you very much, and I hope that this bill will pass second reading and go straight to third reading and straight to the Senate.
As raised by colleagues.
I don't know if the chairman business is here. Like somebody has rightly pointed out, this is an emergency session, more or less. And I say drastic situations call for drastic measures. Unless we are not learning. Let me apologize that the bill has not been circulated. Because unfortunately for the business and rules, we have to summon them. Just a couple of days ago, and they worked night and day. So the situation did not call, or was not amenable for 360 copies and circulation of copies. But I believe, like many bills that have passed this House, sometimes we just basically need to follow the argument under the circumstances. The issue of vaccination, if you look at the language of the bill, it says the NCDC may. It doesn't say shall. It says may. Giving the NCDC the powers to use their discretion, looking at the locality, looking at the culture, and looking at how infectious and dangerous this disease may be. That is the empowerment we're talking about. It is also not true for anyone, particularly somebody of long standing or longevity in this House, to say public hearing is an integral part of every bill. I'm sure he knows the reason and the essence of public hearing. What public hearing means, after a bill has gone through first, second, and third, and through the rigors of the National Assembly or the legislature, public hearing means exactly what it says, public. That means it gives people outside, the public, the opportunity to contribute. If it's a bill, for instance, on medicine, perhaps doctors. If it's a bill on accountancy, perhaps chartered accountants. Because nobody has the monopoly of knowledge. But I'll have him understand and know that in crafting this bill, we worked with health officials. But the important thing is that a public hearing is not a sine qua non for the passage of any bill in this House. That's a fact. And many bills have been passed without. Otherwise, what it will mean, invariably, is that a House that passes thousands of bills in a year will have to subject every bill, based on his own logic, to public hearing. Let's forget about the cost. Let's forget about the time. Let's forget about the energy. Even an ordinary innocuous bill must be subjected to public hearing. But that is not the position of our law, of our rules. And to also begin to talk about chip in somebody's body. I thought we were here to address some very serious, very important issues. Many of us have talked and argued about the menace of social media and fake news. I'm not here to argue what is fake news or what is not fake news, but to start peddling those rumors in a hollow chamber, I do not think we should be doing that in this House. This bill, like I said, the essence of it is to improve on what we have all acknowledged, which is almost damaging to us, that we are operating an act that was passed in 1920 something or thereabouts, or 1960, with some archaic law. 1928. And the time has come for its review. So for the purpose of the times we're in, I think it's important that, and I'll plead with members, apologize for the non-circulation of the bill, that we pass this bill. And there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong if later on you discover that there's a matter that goes to the heart of the bill. You can bring an amendment once the bill is passed. But the core of the bill, the essence of the bill, is what we should keep our focus on. The details, we can work out later. We can work out later the details. And honorable colleagues, once more, I ask that we please, for the times that we're in, pass this bill for today and send it to the Senate. Thank you.
Say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Clerk is invited to read the left title of the bill.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, a bill for now to repeal the Quarantine Act, Chapter Q2 laws of the Federation of the year 2004, and now the Control of Infectious Disease Bill, make provision relating to quarantine, and make regulations for preventing the introduction into and spread in Nigeria of dangerous infectious disease and for related matters. Second reading.
Bill referred to Committee of the Whole. Speaker, you may resume your seat. Speaker, go for your seat. Other business.
Colleagues, the second order of the day is a motion on regulating plenary sittings in the period of COVID-19 pandemic and lockdown pursuant to Order 1, Rule 1, Sub-Rule 2 of the Standing Orders of the House of Representatives, standing in the name of Honorable Abubakar Hassan Fulata. Honorable Fulata is invited to move the motion.